Vhagar. Vhagar, known as the Queen of all Dragons, is the dragon who was ridden by Visenya Targaryen during the War of Conquest. Although during this time she was the smallest of the trio that included Balerion and Meraxes, Vhagar was still large enough to swallow a horse whole, and her flames could melt armor. 100 years later, during the reign of Viserys I Targaryen, she is the largest of all known living dragons and the last remaining dragon from the days of Aegon's conquest. Vhagar was flown by Aegon's sister wife Visenya during the War of Conquest. She was one of the 3 dragons present at the Field of Fire, the decisive battle of the conquest that ensured Targaryen mastery of the 7 kingdoms. Vhagar was a she-dragon of House Targaryen. She was ridden by Queen Visenya Targaryen during Aegon's conquest, alongside Aegon the Conqueror's Balerion and their sister Rhaenys' Meraxes. Other known riders of Vhagar are Prince Balerion Targaryen, Lady Laena Velaryon and Prince Aemond Targaryen. Vhagar was named for one of the gods of Old Valyria. Appearance. The color of Vhagar's scales, horns, wings, wing bones, and spinal crest, as well as the color of her flame are not mentioned in the books. However, the artist commissioned for the 2021 A Song of Ice and Fire calendar, Sam Hogg, asked for clarification from George R.R. Martin's team and was told Vhagar was bronze with greenish-blue highlights and bright green eyes. According to Tyrion Lannister, Vhagar was large enough that one could ride a horse down her gullet. It is said that Vhagar's breath was so hot that it could melt a knight's armor and cook him inside. By the time of the Dance of the Dragons, Vhagar was the hardened survivor of 100 battles, had grown almost as large as Balerion, and was the oldest and largest of the dragons in Westeros. Her roar was so powerful that it could shake the very foundations of Storm's End. No living dragon could match her for size or ferocity. History. Vhagar hatched from a dragon egg on Dragonstone during the Century of Blood. She was named after a god of the Valyrian freehold. At some point, Vhagar was claimed by Visenya Targaryen. Visenya first rode Vhagar, demonstrating she was a dragon rider, some time before she married her brother, Aegon. Aegon's conquest. After Aegon landed on Westeros and began his conquest, Visenya flew Vhagar to Stokeworth, where crossbowmen loosed bolts until the dragons set the roofs of the castle keep ablaze. Following Aegon's first coronation, Visenya, upon Vhagar, accompanied the Targaryen fleet, commanded by Daemon Velaryon, to take Gulltown. In the battle in the waters off Gulltown, the Arryn fleet defeated the Targaryen fleet, sinking 1/3 of the ships and capturing near as many. Then, Visenya descended, and burned the ships of the Arryn fleet. Visenya then flew to Crackclaw Point with Vhagar, to accept many pledges of fealty from the local lords. She then flew Vhagar to Stony September to link up with her siblings, their dragons, and Aegon's army. They advanced south, where all 3 dragons took part in the decisive Field of Fire, the only battle in which all 3 of the Targaryen dragons took to the sky at the same time during Aegon's conquest. Together, Vhagar, Meraxes, and Balerion killed 4,000 men, burning them alive. King Mern IX Gardner died, and with him House Gardner. The army was broken, and House Targaryen was victorious. Visenya next flew Vhagar to the Trident in the Riverlands, where she met with her brother and sister and their dragons, to face King in the North Torrhen Stark. Brandon Snow, the bastard brother of Torrhen, offered to sneak into the Targaryen camp at night to slay the dragons, but the Northern King refused the attempt, and instead sent his brother as an envoy, eventually bending the knee to the Targaryens. Afterwards, Visenya flew Vhagar back to the Vale, where she landed with her dragon in the inner courtyard of the Eyrie. When Dowager Queen Shara Arryn reached the courtyard, she found her young son, King Ronald Arryn, sitting on Visenya's knee, staring with wonder at Vhagar. The young king begged his mother for a ride on Vhagar's back. Shara bent her knee and surrendered, and Ronald rode on Vhagar thrice about the summit of the Giant's Lance. Nonetheless, House Arryn thought that the Vale could still resist Targaryen domination by hiding behind the impregnable mountains of the moon along their borders, and fortifying the mountain passes beyond any hope of attack. Similar to how Aegon had dealt with Harrenhal, Visenya simply flew Vhagar directly over the mountains, and came to rest in the courtyard of the Arryn's own castle, the Eyrie. At the time, the King of Mountain and Vale was only a small boy, Ronald Arryn, whose mother Shara was acting as his regent. Visenya did not need to burn the Eyrie as Aegon had burned Harrenhal. Her display of force with Vhagar and easily befriending Ronald was enough to convince the Arryns to surrender. Young Ronald did ask one condition for his surrender. In return, Visenya would give him a ride around the Eyrie atop her dragon. The Vale surrendered, and true to her word, Visenya gave Ronald a ride atop Vhagar. First Dornish War. Following the deaths of Rhaenys and Meraxes in 10 AC at Hellholt in Dorne, Visenya and Aegon burned every Dornish stronghold at least once, except Sunspear and its Shadow City, during a 2-year period known as the Dragon's Wrath. The Dornish tell a tale that the Targaryens refused to attack Sunspear because they were afraid that Princess Maria Martell had purchased a device from Lys to slay Vhagar and Balerion, but Archmaester Timothy suggests the Targaryens intended to turn the other Dornish houses against the Martells. Following the death of Balerion sometime before the accession of Viserys I Targaryen to the Iron Throne, Vhagar remained the last of the 3 dragons who had come to Westeros with the Targaryens. She eventually became the Mount of Balon Targaryen until his death. Aenys I and Maegor I. When King Aegon I died in 37 AC, Vhagar supplied the flames to light the fire of his funeral pyre. In 41 AC, when King Aenys I Targaryen named his eldest son and heir, Prince Aegon, the Prince of Dragonstone at his wedding, Visenya angrily left for Dragonstone. It was said that the moon turned as red as blood when Vhagar passed it. Later that year, when King Aenys arrived at Dragonstone, fleeing the first rebels in the Faith militant uprising, Visenya asked him to grant her leave to take Vhagar and burn the Starry September in Old Town. Aenys refused. After Maegor had claimed the crown on Dragonstone, Visenya accompanied him upon Vhagar and crossed Blackwater Bay to King's Landing. The return of both Vhagar and Balerion to King's Landing set off riots in the city. Prior to Maegor's wedding to Tiana of the Tower, Visenya flew upon Vhagar to Driftmark to convince Alyssa Velaryon to appear at the wedding. When the Faith militant continued to resist Maegor's reign, even after the losses they suffered at the Battle of Stonebridge and the battle at the Great Fork of the Blackwater, Visenya mounted Vhagar and burned the seats of House Blaintree, House Terrick, House Deddings, House Leicester, and House Wayne in the Riverlands within a single night. Maegor flew Balerion to the Westerlands, burning the seats of House Broom, House Doggett, House Falwell, House Lorch, House Myatt, and other pious lords who had defied his royal summons. In 43 AC, Maegor and Visenya turned towards Old Town, threatening to incinerate the Starry Sept in response to the High Septon's condemnation of his polygamous marriages. Only the mysterious death of the High Septon, which allowed Lord Martin Hightower to open his gates before Balerion and Vhagar, saved the city from Dragonflame. Visenya died on Dragonstone in 44 AC, leaving Vhagar without a rider. Reign of Jaehaerys I. Vhagar remained unridden for 29 years after Visenya's death, spending much of that time on Dragonstone and later taking residence in the Dragon Pit in King's Landing. It was in 73 AC that Prince Balon the Brave, after achieving knighthood, set out to follow his brother Prince Aemond and become a dragon rider claiming Vhagar. Vhagar along with Caraxes and Vermithor burned the Dornish fleet that attempted to invade the Stormlands during the Fourth Dornish War in 83 AC. After the death of Balerion of old age in 94 AC, Vhagar became the last of the 3 Targaryen dragons who had fought in the conquest. Vhagar became riderless again, when Prince Balon passed away in 101 AC. Reign of Viserys I. Vhagar's next known rider was Lady Laena Velaryon, who had become a dragon rider before the age of 12. According to the Maester at Driftmark, the seat of House Velaryon, Laena loved to fly. When Laena wed Prince Daemon Targaryen in 115 AC, they flew upon their dragons across the narrow sea to Pentos, Volantis, Qohor, and Norvos. Everywhere they went, huge crowds came to catch a glimpse of Vhagar and Caraxes, Daemon's dragon. After Laena gave birth in 116 AC, Daemon brought both his own dragon and Vhagar back to Westeros. Laena and Daemon grew close with Daemon's niece, Rhaenyra Targaryen, and the 3 often flew together upon their dragons, Vhagar, Caraxes, and Syrax. Laena died early in 120 AC. It is said that Laena attempted to reach Vhagar in her final hour as to fly one last time, but she did not have the strength. Following Laena's funeral on Driftmark, the 10-year-old Prince Aemond Targaryen claimed Vhagar as his own dragon. House of the Dragon, Season 1. Queen Aemma Arryn tells her husband, King Viserys, that their daughter Rhaenyra has picked a dragon egg that reminds her of Vhagar for her unborn sibling, who she hopes will be a girl named Visenya. In conversation with Lady Laena Velaryon, Viserys tells her that Vhagar has not been seen for some time, but that the dragon keepers believed she had made her nest along the coast of the narrow sea. By this time, Vhagar's size was such that she was too large to remain in the dragon pit. Laena says that traders in Spicetown on her native Driftmark claimed to hear her song at times, and that it sounds sad. Viserys muses that even dragons can get lonely. More than a decade later, Vhagar is the mount of Laena herself. Laena takes great pride in riding the largest known living dragon in the world, riding alongside her husband Daemon and his own dragon Caraxes. Sometime later, Laena suffers a difficult birth, with everyone believing the child must be cut out of her to survive. Unwilling to die in bed, she stumbles outside to find Vhagar, before giving the command, Dracarys. Vhagar hesitates, unwilling to burn her rider despite her repeated pained commands. Eventually, she complies and unleashes her dragonfire, incinerating Laena to prevent a more drawn-out and painful death. Days later, as she sleeps on the beach of high tide, Vhagar is awakened by Aemond Targaryen, who desires to ride a dragon. She initially ignores his attempt to mount her and goes back to sleep, but when Aemond tries again, Vhagar nearly unleashes her dragonfire on him but is successfully commanded by Aemond in High Valyrian. Having now claimed and bonded with her, Aemond takes her for a first flight, though he nearly falls to his death having not properly fastened himself to the saddle. He is able to fly her around Driftmark. Later, during the royal family's return to King's Landing, Aemond rides Vhagar home. Aemond rides Vhagar to Storm's End to treat with and gain the support of Lord Boros Baratheon for Aegon. She notices the arrival of Viserys, Velaryon and Meraxes. After Viserys and Meraxes leave, Aemond pursues on Vhagar to scare him and take one of his eyes as revenge for losing his own shortly after he claimed Vhagar. After nearly snatching him several times, she loses track of Meraxes when the small dragon flies into a ravine, far too narrow for her to follow. But Meraxes, against Luke's wishes, turns around and blasts Vhagar with dragon flame. Enraged, Vhagar pursues, ignoring Aemond as he desperately tries to regain control of her. Above the storm, Vhagar catches Meraxes in her mouth. Being about 5 times larger than the younger dragon, she easily rips him apart. Game of Thrones, Season 1. Viserys tells Doria that Vhagar's skull decorated the Great Hall of the Red Keep prior to Robert's rebellion. Game of Thrones, Season 2. While Arya is in the service of Tywin in Harrenhal, she mentions that Vhagar was one of the 3 dragons used in the War of Conquest, ridden by Visenya Targaryen. Game of Thrones, Season 3. While incarcerated and learning to read, Davos has trouble reading Vhagar's name. Game of Thrones, Season 5. Shireen is reading The Dance of Dragons, a true telling, and retells the story of Vhagar and Ser Byron Swan to Davos, which they share a laugh over. In the books, Visenya continued to ride Vhagar to war during the Faith militant uprising, burning out rebel castles in the Riverlands as once she had burned out castles in Dorne, even though Visenya was over 70 years old at the time. Visenya eventually died late in Maegor's reign. Her riders during the next 60 or so years, if any, are unknown. Vhagar remained riderless for many years following Visenya's death, lairing first in the yards of Dragonstone and later in the Dragon Pit of King's Landing. It was during the reign of King Jaehaerys I, when his and good Queen Alysanne's children produced an abundance of Targaryens to claim the remaining dragons, that Vhagar finally gained a new rider in the king's second son, Prince Balon. Balon would ride Vhagar into battle during the Fourth Dornish War, alongside his father, astride Vermithor, and his elder brother Prince Aemon, astride Caraxes. Later, after Aemon was killed on Tarth by Myrish pirates, Balon exacted a terrible vengeance for his beloved brother's death by unleashing Vhagar's fury on them. Balon was made the Prince of Dragonstone and the Hand of the King for his exploits during the war on Tarth, but died several years later of a burst belly, leaving Vhagar riderless yet again. Later during the Old King's reign, Balerion died of old age, making Vhagar the oldest and largest of the Targaryen dragons. After Meraxes and then Balerion died, Vhagar was the last of the original 3 Targaryen dragons. Meraxes died fighting in Dorne, while Balerion later died of old age. Vhagar was the mother of several of the second-generation Targaryen dragons, but exactly which ones have not yet been specified. Vhagar fought in more major Westerosi wars than any other Targaryen dragon, the War of Conquest, the Faith militant uprising, and the Dance of the Dragons. Meraxes only fought in the War of Conquest. Balerion did fight in the Faith militant uprising, ridden by Visenya's own son Maegor after Aegon died, but he died before the Dance of the Dragons, though Balerion did fight in previous wars outside of Westeros, such as the Century of Blood, in the Free Cities. Despite being one of the more famous dragons in the story, mentioned since the first novel, Vhagar's coloration went unrevealed for 25 years. Of the 3 original Targaryen dragons, Balerion was stated to be black with red highlights, while Meraxes' color, silver, wasn't revealed until The World of Ice and Fire was published in 2014. This became a point of contention among fans, repeatedly pressing George R.R. Martin about it in Q&A, but he would only respond that he hadn't decided yet and kept putting it off. Vhagar's color was finally revealed in the official 2021 A Song of Ice and Fire calendar. Artist Sam Hogg had to make an illustration of Vhagar, and asked for direct clarification from Martin's team, who responded that Vhagar was bronze, with greenish-blue highlights, and green eyes. In homage to Vhagar, Daenerys Targaryen renames one of the ships Illyrio Mopatis sent her after her. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.